that one particular group of people that have really made a dent in terms of the world culture and have managed to cross the lines are probably the Latin American writers. I think that they have acquired the acceptability of the world's culture, and I think that we are very privileged to have that as a backbone of our culture. Unfortunately, we ourselves in this country live in a very special place. I mean, we live in one of the most affluent countries in the world. And yet the Latin American writers who have managed to influence the world are living in, most of them are living in Latin America, or they're living in different countries, not necessarily this one. Yet I think that we, for having the US as our base, have the responsibility yet to have the accessibility maybe to influence the world over, because we have the access to this system. I think that in order to achieve, say, what the Latin American writers have achieved, the people who are in this country, the Hispanics that are in this country, have to think in universal terms. They can't think, oh, well, I'm writing for the Hispanic community in Washington, or I am dancing for the Hispanic community in Washington, or my theater group is for the Hispanic community in Washington. That's not going to get us far enough, unfortunately. And the Latin American writers did not put those barriers onto themselves. I think that those barriers were never there for them. And we have to think with the same projection of that universal quality, the universal quality, say, of 100 Years of Solitude of Garcia Marquez. If we can project, if I myself as a painter can project my images into that universality, then I'm doing my work not only as a Hispanic, not only as a painter, but as a creative person anywhere.
You know, even when you have in this society those positive aspects by the at-large society, such as special grants, such as university scholarships and so forth, even those positive aspects tend to box you in. And if you can relate that a little bit in your own experience, you're being able to go to college, you're being able to be exhibited because you were Hispanic, which of course you use. And it benefited you, but then in a sense it puts you in,
right.
in a box.
Well, I think that you're walking a very tight, you're walking a tight line, is a tight rope. And there I think that that fine line that divides a person like me, say, that was able to go to college because I got through a minority program, and having gotten that experience, I could have easily limited myself in that experience. But my feeling was I was given this opportunity, and let's make the best out of it. Let's get as much out of this unusual experience. The programs, even like the minority programs that I went to school in, were probably for the system were a terrible mistake, because as they relate to these programs is by numbers, and the numbers say, well, 50% flunked out, 25% more or less graduated, and the other 25% are somewhere in a limbo. You know, I'm just giving numbers out, but it's probably very close anyway. And so myself, I wanted to be able to compete with the academic students that had gotten a very, very good education that I had not gotten, but I wanted to compete at that level. Now, in Washington, the same thing happens with the gallery, say, in a way. I could decide, well, I have access, because I'm Hispanic, to a couple of galleries in town that deal with Hispanic art. And because of that, I could just do whatever work gets me through and gets me a show. But my interest is not that. I mean, my interest is to do the best work I can do as an artist. And if those places give me the opportunity to show, well, I take those opportunities. I take any opportunity that comes by, whether it is in a Hispanic place or whether it is in a mainstream place. And because of that, I don't want to necessarily limit myself to those Hispanic galleries. It would be very silly for me to do that. But because I have shown there, people look at my credentials and think, well, this guy is not really, maybe he's not capable of getting mainstream shows. So he's shown in all these alternative spaces that are for minorities. So when I try to get a bigger and better show, I still have to fight just as hard as had I not maybe had any shows, or maybe worse. Maybe I have to fight harder now because my image is being already decided by these people as a Hispanic artist.
Going back to a little bit to your background, you seem to have had an unusual background in getting to be a painter, in becoming an artist. How did that come about? Why did you get interested in painting first?
Okay, well, my background basically started with literature in school. And I have a degree in Latin American and Spanish literature. And when I decided that that was not going to be my profession, I started to look at alternatives way of being creative, because what I was interested in literature was because provided me an expression. And I realized that a lot of the things that I did were visual. A lot of the images that I was writing were very visual. So I stumbled into photography by just luck, I guess. Somebody lent me a camera, a friend lent me a camera. And through that, I got hooked on photography. And I realized the power of the image, the power of a picture. And I very studiously study by myself composition. I went to many exhibits, I went to the museums and studied photography and learned photography. But that still felt like it wasn't enough to me. And I don't know really what left me somewhat cold there. One thing that I can say now is that I was limited in scope. Right? The size of what I could print in photography was too small for me. And part of it also was the limitations of doing darkroom work. I think that the photograph, even the most experimental photograph, you have a lot of limitations. It's almost what the camera sees and what you could alter in the darkroom. But with painting, it's a totally different feeling. I could work very large, and I can immediately get the gratification of something coming right inside of me that has no basis of anything else. It's not in a photograph, or it could be taken from photographs. It presents a whole different realm of possibilities, which I think photography for me didn't have, and clearly writing didn't have for me.
Most people would say that, again, you have been extremely lucky, and that you have here learned photography and then learned painting. All that has been very easy, and then anybody else can do it. Is it as easy as it appears that you can go ahead and switch and learn a new craft and a new profession?
Yeah, I wish that I wish it was as easy as it sounds. It was extremely painful to move out of a university environment that was very comfortable and where I had a profession laid out for me, and move into something that had absolutely nothing to hold on to, because I got out of school and I had no network and I had no idea what I really wanted to do. So when I found photography, it was like starting all over again. And when I found painting, it was like starting all over again. And those moves are very difficult. And I think that as a painter, as in each one of those areas, I think that there is a certain amount of luck. I have been lucky in some. I've given breaks. the point is that most of us are given breaks. Sometimes some people are more lucky than others. But if I see something that's coming to me, my feeling is grab it. I mean, don't miss a chance, because they're very rarely given to you again. And so, yes, part of it is luck. Part of it is being receptive to that luck. Part of it is using it as much as you can. And no field in this world today is easy. No field. Doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, whether you're just a baker. It's very difficult to make a profession, to live comfortably of any profession. As an artist, is equally bad. It's worse than anything else in a way that a regular profession that brings you money, brings you a paycheck every week. Because with the visual arts, in particular with painting, I am not doing it for the money. And because of that, it is very hard to get money for it. I mean, it's a very limited market. And you have to have a devotion, and something that is quite difficult to point at. It's not somebody overnight can say, well, I'm going to be a painter, or I'm going to be a photographer, or I'm going to be a writer. Because all of those professions, unto themselves, required a tremendous devotion and a tremendous energy to make it work for you, to be successful at them. And in order for you to be successful, you have to have the creativity that goes along with it. You have to have the technical ability to do it. But you also have to have some motivation that comes unexplainable from I don't know where. In the classics were the muse. The muse would touch you and you had it. But it's really very hard to point, and I think that's why the idea of the muse is so attractive.
Do you feel that some of this success is due in part to ignorance of the tremendous obstacles that you had in switching careers and making it in those new fields?
I think that I have been very naive at times, and there's a certain youthfulness that has helped me with this. I think that part of it has been a fact that when I changed careers from literature, I had a very comfortable setting, and I thought, well, I happen to be very privileged. I came from a very difficult environment in the ghettos of Brooklyn to a very prestigious academic school, and I should be prepared to deal with anything else. I've been given a rare opportunity, and yet the next cycle around was equally as hard as any other jump that I had made before, and so that's not. I don't think it ever gets easy, Se me perdió la línea de lo que iba a decir.
That's fine. You answered the question. Do you think that there is any particular direction, any particular thing that Francisco Alvarado-Juarez is trying to say with his work? Are you trying to, what do you try to say with your work? What does he say? Is there a particular thrust to it?
Yeah, that is the $50 question. I think that's probably the hardest thing for most creative people to say, because if I could point to you, this is exactly what I'm trying to say, it would probably be a little boring, because I myself would have determined already, narrowed down my possibilities. So when I am creating, when I am working, when I am doing artwork, I have no limitations. I don't put any scope of limitations to myself, to my work. And so whatever comes out of me is what I think should be on my canvas. Sometimes those things are a little scary, because they don't necessarily say, they don't necessarily please you, or they will not necessarily please anyone else, in the sense that pleasing you is not a pretty picture, say. Of course, it pleases you to be the creator, but so you have these things coming out of you. And somewhere along the process, you decide, well, this is what I do. This is my creation. This is that I'm supposed to be doing. And as long as the flows, as long as the juices are flowing, and things are coming out all right, then that's what I do. That's my work. Now that's a very vague answer, I realize, but the art is not something that you can very easily point your finger at, because for me, the creative process is something that is so personal, and it's so personal in the sense that I myself am discovering it. I'm myself discovering myself in the process. And sometimes an image comes out and you think, oh my God, I had this thing inside of me? You know, how could it be possible that this thing is inside of me and I never knew it? And it just came out at age 34, you know, for the first time. And that's something that is, I think, is peculiar to the creative fields. And so to me, art is really a gut feeling, is going inside of myself and trying to rip myself apart and put it out. And in that process, I think that I am saying, or I hope that I'm saying something that is very personal, something that refers only to me in a way as a human being, but that is also hopefully universal, because the deeper I search inside of me, the more the human element of me is coming out. Therefore, the universal side of you know, the deeper you touch into yourself, the more the universal the material will be. The more universal the material would be, because you're touching what everybody can relate to deep inside of yourself. Everybody can relate to the basic human elements, and I hope that my work is that. And so that is probably the best answer I can give you without sounding maybe pretentious or sounding naive or whatever. You know, I'm trying to do this. It would be ridiculous to say this is what I want to do in art. You know, I want to paint this.
What was your gut reaction, your feeling, as an artist, to have your, and as a painter in particular, to have your first painting that is to be bought by somebody like of Hirschman's level?
It's a very peculiar situation. I think it happened before, and it happened in a different way. And this was that when I was in school, I was writing, and one of the first times that I got major exposure as a writer was when a writer that was teaching in the university saw one of my short stories. I happened to have given it to him to look at and to give me some criticism. Very naively and very, very humbly, I gave him this few-page short story to a writer that has written very famous novels and so on. And I had written a number of short stories by then, but all the stuff was being published in partly in the magazine that I was publishing myself. So I never had I never really knew what the value of my work was. And I gave it to this writer. His name is Juan Goitisolo. And Juan Goitisolo looked at it and didn't say anything for a long time. And I kept going to his classes and I didn't hear anything. So I assumed, well, it must have, this must have been so bad that he doesn't even want to say anything to me. And then my surprise was that one day he said to me, well, I read your story and I would like to publish it. And he said, I'm the interim, or I am the director right now, the editor of Libre, a magazine that was published in Paris. It was published along with people like Garcia Marquez and Mario Vargas Llosa, and Borges published in it, and all the intelligentsia of the Latin American and French establishment. And Goitisolo had the responsibility of doing that particular issue. And so he said to me, would you let me publish it in the next issue of Libre? And I couldn't believe it, of course. I mean, it was like incredible what but this had happened. Well, the reason why I'm saying this is because I was very young at that time, and it was very difficult for me to realize what this really meant, and it kind of devastated me for a while. And I think it also kind of prevented me from writing seriously again, because always I was trying to match what I had done before, something, you know, trying to be profound, whatever the hell that is.
The Hirschhorn experience then?